Hi y'all, editing Ilana here. I don't know how well this is going to turn out, but I just wanted to come in and say that I know that the quality of this camera was not good, and I'm not going to be using it again, but this was a very draining video to film, and I really don't want to go in there and have to redo everything, and try to make sure that I cover the same things, and like that I get through everything. So if you don't want to watch it, I understand. The quality does get better at the end whenever I finally switch over to my phone. But yeah, just a heads up at that. So yeah, here's the video. Okay, hi y'all, I'm Ilana and welcome to my channel Unabridged Adventures. And my lighting or whatever might look a bit different today because I'm actually filming on a real camera because I'm going to be doing a vlog later and I don't want to fill up the storage on my phone. So yeah, this is just going to be a bit of a sit down, get another tea and chat in about Rhythm of War today. And I don't know if you can actually see that, so let me move that. So I finished Rhythm of War a few days ago, and it was certainly interesting. And so for those of you that don't know, this will be a spoiler chat, just discussing different parts about Rhythm of War, which is the fourth book in the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. Okay, so starting off, this book follows so many more characters that I'm used to, I guess. So I'm just going to go down through characters, talk about different moments that I really enjoyed, and just what I thought about the book in general. This will not be a review because I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, as I have pretty much all of the Stormlight Archive books, just because they're so expansive and like I don't think I could give them like 4 out of 5 stars. So, Rhythm of War. Um, yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think of this stuff down in the comments below. So yeah, I guess we're just gonna start off. So first of all, we get the prologue with Navani, and I loved how much we got Navani's like perspective in this book. It was so interesting and not at all what I'm used to from Navani, and it was just, we haven't really gotten her perspective at all before. She's always just been another like background character, almost like a secondary character, and like she really shone through in this book, and I absolutely loved seeing that. Like Navani is my engineering queen, quite literally. And for those of you that don't know, I'm not an engineer. I am going to school to be an engineer, and specifically aerospace engineering. And so like reading about the bridge and like the fourth bridge and everything, I know my friend said that it's like too technical and boring, but I loved every second of it. Like that is really what I want to see more of in fantasy, is like people explaining how things actually work. Like the Fabrials were so interesting to me. So yeah, and specifically the I am worthy moment. And like, I have never hated Gavilar more than in the prologue when he's talking to Navani and says like, you know why I won't tell you what I'm doing? It's because you aren't worthy. You aren't a scholar. You aren't like actually intelligent. You just throw money at things and make it happen. And oh god, that is like the imposter syndrome that she has to deal with, like this entire book is so real. And like, as a woman in engineering, it is difficult to feel like you actually belong there. It's difficult for an engineer in general because you never quite feel like you actually deserve to be there. Like I've spoken to, not talking, I've spoken to a lot of my other friends that are going into engineering, and it's just difficult to feel like you actually are qualified to be doing anything that you are. Like even going to school doesn't quite feel right. And so reading about Navani, who is so clearly a scholar, and like that's pretty much how Dalinar introduces her in like Way of Kings, is he's talking about like how smart she is, like how genius she is, and how like she's this amazing scholar and like queen. And so it was just so, not sad, but just so realistic, I guess, to see how from Navani's perspective she doesn't see any of that in herself. So, gosh, yeah, and so the fact that I understand. I had an argument with my friend about this. Sorry, tea break. I had an argument with my friend about this because he doesn't like that Navani bonded the tower, that bonded Urithiru, or the sibling. The sibling, that's what it is. He doesn't like that Navani bonded the sibling, and he thinks it should have been Rlain, and I agree to a point. I think it was a matter of life and death for both of them, and I don't think either of them really wanted to be bonded, but it was what needed to happen for them both to survive and for other people to survive, and so they made this choice. And, like, honestly, if we're gonna talk about bonding unwilling Spren, like, didn't the Stormfather not want to be bonded to Dalinar in a much stronger manner than the sibling didn't want to be bonded to Navani? But she still accepted, not she, they, the sibling, still accepted her words. I'm getting pronouns mixed up. The sibling still accepted Navani's oath, or Navani's words. And I think that's the main thing, is that same as how same as how the other Spren took away the agency of the Deadeyes in saying, like, oh, you killed them, like, they had nothing to do with this, and not recognizing their agency and the fact that they knew what they were doing, or at least they knew part of what they were doing, and it was their decision. Like, it was still the siblings' decision to accept her words. And I think that's something that we're kind of overlooking whenever I've seen discussions about this. But that's just my 2 cents on the topic. Yeah, I love Navani. I loved her I am worthy moment and really, like, feeling like she has become a scholar, and it was just beautiful and lovely, and I loved everything about it. So that's I love her. I've got a picture of her up on my wall now, with, like, my favorite characters. Okay, so moving on from Navani to, ooh, who should we talk about next? This is gonna be so off topic, but I'm so glad that Kaladin is becoming, like, a therapist, pretty much. Like, he's, like, the first therapist, because I made a joke in the Discord at the beginning of reading this, that there needs to be a new Order of Radiance that just deals with the therapy for the other Radiants and everyone around them. And, like, I feel like Kaladin is becoming that, and I really hope that I'm still in frame. I'm gonna turn slightly, in case I'm not. But, like, Gavinor, I'm pretty sure that's his name, Elikar's kid, needs so much therapy. Like, that child is not great. Like, he's not doing good. And so, I hope that Kaladin is able to, after helping the next Herald comes back, it just gives Gavinor some much needed therapy. Gosh, I worry for that kid. I know he's a fictional character, but also the fact that he's gonna have to grow up and then, like, at one point he's going to call Dalinar his grandfather and someone's gonna be like, well, you know, he's actually your great uncle, and then he's gonna have to deal with that. That's gonna be interesting. Okay, so moving on to some of the more serious parts. Not that Navani's wasn't serious, but Kaladin's depression was something that hit me so hard in this book, because we've seen how his depression is developing in the other books, and how he's aware of it, and how other people aren't all that aware of it. But I was worried that, like a lot of other books, and I know I should have known better than to worry about Brandon doing this, but I was concerned that he was going to be depressed and then there was not going to be that breaking point. There wasn't going to be that moment where it stops you. Okay, sorry. My dad came in to talk about Christmas gifts. But, where are we? Kaladin's depression. I kind of expected Kaladin to just kind of continue on doing his thing and, like, just trying to suppress his depression. And suppress is not the correct word. I can't think of what the correct word is. And while I think a lot of people with depression, myself included, when you're in that kind of headspace, you kind of think that you just have to keep going through the motions. And like, for me, going through the motions is just going to school, talking to people, dealing with family. And for Kaladin, going through the motions is literally going to war. And so, like, there comes a breaking point for any person with depression where it just becomes too much. And you cannot keep continuing on like you were. You have to do something. And so seeing that happen, like, and oh my gosh, I can't even really put into words how it made me feel to see that, but it was very accurate, and especially to see him freezing. It's like that moment of where you have like your fight, flight, or freeze like moment, and like you feel like you can't do anything. And that happens to everyday people with depression, where you just can't keep doing things and you just kind of stop. And so having him freeze in such important moments is so accurate and also so meaningful, because it means that he's forced to do something about this. Just like we see with like Dalinar making him take a step back, and like, oh gosh, it hit me so hard whenever, like, I know it's like the first chapter in, or like a chapter or two in, but Dalinar making him step down, it was such a conflicting moment even as a reader, because I could see both sides, and I felt like Kaladin did, where I felt angry and kind of betrayed almost, and just angry at like, not myself, but like, you get that feeling of where you are feeling what the characters are, but also like psychologically and like logically, I guess, I know that this is good for him and it's what needs to happen. And so it was just like, at least for me, I was really in Kaladin's headspace while reading that, and so it hurt, but it also felt really good as a reader to see that something was actually going to happen with Kaladin's depression, and like things might actually get better. So yeah, God, there was so much about Kaladin's depression in this, and watching Odium try to break him was so difficult. Gosh, honestly, I did not cry at Tef's death, but I cried when Kaladin found him because of what that meant, and I honestly thought that he was going to become Odium's like champion at that moment, and I understood it. Like, I would have been sad, but this was another case in which I completely understood if he decided to take that route and like just become emotionless, like Moash. And so it was just so difficult to watch and to read, I guess, not watch. And so him taking the other route, or about to, was full of emotion for me. And so having Dalinar kind of push his boundaries and actually go out there and do something to save him was so meaningful. It shows that like people outside of his family and his immediate friends are actually willing to do something to help, and like that he means something to people. And so seeing that, and like him taking the moment to try and put him into that like vision, that moment, and his conversation with Tien meant a lot. But I think the thing that hit me the most, I didn't cry in this book until he said the fourth oath. Oh gosh, I can't even think of what it's called. But until he said, I accept that there are some that I cannot protect, and I just started bawling at that moment, because that's such a hard thing to accept. Like, I didn't know what the fourth oath that he had to swear was, and so I was kind of like, oh, I don't know why he's like having this issue with it. Like, maybe he just like can't take it, and I didn't know what it was, but the second that he said it, it was like everything made sense. Like, the fact that he hadn't sworn it before made so much sense, because he's never willing to give up on anyone. And so seeing him say that after speaking to his brother was so important. Gosh, and the conversation with Wit, I I teared up at that. I didn't cry, but I did tear up because that hit me so hard with the "you may not be warm now, but you will be warm again" conversation at the end of, I think it's 81. I have it tabbed in the book because that did something to my heart, and it meant so much. Just watching Kaladin come to terms with his depression really and accept it, and not accept that he is depressed and will stay that way, but accept there's something wrong and he needs to fix it, was so meaningful. Gosh, and then on that topic, I guess, there was one, I think I tabbed it, I'm gonna have to find the quote, but like, as someone with a chronic illness that has gone through so many, like, I've spent 4 years trying to get diagnosed, and it has been so difficult and so full of emotion and difficult. Just, it was difficult. Emotionally, physically, mentally difficult. And so, gosh, I think it's here. Just to read the quote for a second. This is whenever Kaladin is still working as a surgeon with his father, like, it's pretty early on in the book, as you can see, and it says, "Fortunately, there were medicines that could help, and with Yasna's capability of soul casting, or with Yasna capable of soul casting a wide range of substances, they had access to rare medications. Though Kaladin and the Queen didn't quite see eye to eye, it said a great deal about her that she was willing to take time to make medicine. Cal gave Mill a requisition chip to get some from the medical quartermaster, and told him to spend a month recording each and every headache with signs he'd notice of it coming on. It wasn't much, but Mill grinned from ear to ear. Often people just wanted to know they weren't fools or weaklings for coming in. They wanted to know that their pains were real, and that there was something, even something small, that they could do about the problem. Simple affirmations could be worth more than medications." Gosh, simple affirmations could be worth more than medications is so accurate, so painfully accurate, and I think this is, oh, there we go, now it's sticky again, because I have gone to so many doctors that either say that my pain's not real, like, that I'm just weak, that this is a normal amount of pain that everyone deals with, and that I should just, like, suck it up. And so hearing a doctor and, like, a physical therapist and people say, no, this pain is real, it is difficult, and there are, like, it's not curable, but there are things that you can do to lessen it, it means so much, and it is so validating. And so to see, like, a huge author, like, mention that and, like, validate that feeling means so much. Even whenever, like, he wasn't even talking about chronic illnesses, really. Like, he was talking about migraines, which Okay, I honestly don't know where the video ended, so I guess we're gonna go back through a few things. Yeah, so I was just reading that quote, and sorry, I was just reading that quote and talking about just that quote knocked the breath out of me, because it was such a simple acknowledgement, and it was such a, it wasn't a big moment, it wasn't, like, they didn't make a big deal out of it, it wasn't even really supposed to be something that you even notice that much, but for me, who's been through that process so many times, it really struck a chord with me, and I love that quote so much. But yeah, getting into Queen Yasna, I am loving how she's handling becoming the queen. I'm loving how she's handling the monarchy. I think I said earlier, I honestly don't know what recorded or not, that I think that they hadn't really addressed the evils of a total monarchy before this. Like, yeah, we knew that like the kings had done bad things, but no one had ever suggested any other like solution or situation. And so seeing her come in and say, you know what, nope, like I'm going to fix some things, and then I'm like instituting a bureaucracy like the Azish or like even the Thalen, and like we're going to have some checks and balances here, and Dalinar having to deal with that and recognize that there's things changing, like the world is changing around him, and some things are changing for the better, but they also may be getting slower, which is like the issue with having a like bureaucracy added, is the fact that you're going to have to deal with all of these extra checks and balances and forms and like signatures and everything that comes with actually running a government, besides just having one guy be like, yep, that's it, I have decided we are all going to eat meatballs on Tuesday. I don't know. Or deciding just like kill an entire people. It they can go either way, which is why monarchies are scary. So yeah, we were talking about that. She stabbed a guy through the throat, and I loved every second of it. I loved how dramatic it was, because Yasna is a drama queen at heart. We all know this. But yeah, I loved that whole sequence and how she baited him into it, just to make a point. I honestly wouldn't have been that upset if she didn't call Renarin in, because, you know, that guy wasn't much of an issue. Like, I didn't... Well, that guy was an issue. I mean, he wasn't much of a character that I actually cared about. I gotta say, though, that I do not like her relationship with Wit. I like them being friends, or as close as they can get without any trust between them, but I do not like the possible romantic, like, things happening there, purely because in my head, Yasna was always a lesbian. Like, my friend Mason started reading the books, and, like, partway into, I think it was, like, Words of Radiance or something, he just texted me and was like, Yasna's a lesbian, right? And I'm like, I mean, technically no, but yes. And so this whole thing with Wit is just a bit weird, in my mind. But yeah, Wit is also possibly like a primordial being, so does he really have a gender? I don't know, there's questions there. Questions that should be asked by someone much smarter than me. And so I'm happy to see some ace representation, although it's just in my heart, Yasna is a lesbian who's also ace. So, yeah. Oh, God, Adolin and Maya. That, I loved that so much, because I didn't realize that, like, there was something that had been bothering me this whole time about this idea that the Radiants just killed this friend. And it really was the lack of agency that they were giving this friend, and I was not able to recognize that until Maya actually spoke up and said something, and I'm like, that's what it was. Like, you hit the nail on the head there. Because, like, these Spren weren't some mindless, like, children running around. They knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing when they bonded someone, like they do now. And, like, saying, like, oh, like, the Stormfather's gone crazy for bonding Dalinar. No, the Stormfather has just changed. Because Spren and people change and can make their decisions on their own. And so the whole thing of how they're treating all of these Spren that decide to bond like children that have been manipulated, and completely taking away their agency. Like, specifically with Syl, where we kept seeing her being referred to as the ancient daughter, and she doesn't know what she's doing, and, like, you've tricked her, and all of that. It was so refreshing to finally get someone, specifically Maya, like, who dealt with that and had her agency taken away, like, coming out and saying, no, this was our choice. We did this. They didn't kill us. We made this decision together. And I loved that moment. Oh gosh, I love seeing Adolin not deal with Maya, but deal with how everyone else sees Maya, and how just completely convinced he is that she knows exactly what is happening and how he's there for her as much as he can be, even whenever he's not entirely giving her her own agency like he should. And I'm glad that that's something that they seem to be working on. And yeah, gosh, it was so amazing to watch. Um, gosh, I loved that entire, like, I didn't love the trial, but I loved that trial scene where she, like, she stood up for herself. She decided that this is what she needed to do, and she did it. And I love Maya. I love Maya so much. Oh gosh, so let's talk about, I guess, Adelin's father issues? I don't want to say daddy issues, but I mean, that's kind of what they are. Um, I got this. Why did I do that? Okay. Okay, I'm a bit of a mess today. But yeah, so Adolin is working so hard to prove himself. And Dalinar, they need family therapy. They really do. Like, Renarin, you're doing great, sweetie. Like, I love you. But Dalinar and Adolin have got to work through their issues, because I understand that part of that issue is the fact that Dalinar killed his mother, and like that is an issue. That is an issue with a capital I. But a lot of this is also the fact that Dalinar now seems to expect every good person to become a Radiant, and I don't understand that. Like, I understand where he's coming from, but also, as someone that has seen the past, he understands that there were people that weren't Radiant, that were still good, that still did things. Um, and so seeing him, like, force, or not force, but encourage his son a bit too much to become a Radiant, is difficult, because I know that they can be better than this, and Adolin doesn't want to be a Radiant. He doesn't want to leave Maya alone in the first place, and second of all, like, the fact that this implies that Dalinar sees non-Radiance as possibly less than? Like, I don't know, this is an interesting conversation. But someone needs to smack him over the head and say, hey, your son was almost imprisoned for eternity, because he felt like he needed to prove something to you. They need to go see Kaladin the therapist once he gets back from Shinovar. Someone that also needs to see Kaladin the therapist when he gets back from Shinovar, although Kaladin needs his own therapist. They need a Urithiru therapy order. Even if they're not Radiants, they just need a whole bunch of therapists. Shalon, I honestly, I'm glad to see that Brandon. Okay, so hi, editing Ilana again. I'm back for like 2 seconds, just to say that the video cut off here, so I don't have anything about my Shalon, like, thoughts, and sorry about that. I might make like an individual video, but I honestly didn't have anything, except it's nice to see other representation of other mental disorders besides just like depression and anxiety. So, yep. Okay, so I think we've talked about pretty much all the humans. So moving on to the listeners. I, gosh, there's so much to cover here. I don't want to talk forever. So, yeah, I love seeing Venli's development. I love getting her backstory and seeing how she was manipulated, but also, gosh, it raises so many questions about, like, agency, and did she completely have her agency taken from her, or was she also complicit in the actions of that Spren, whose name I can't think of right now, and, like, who was the human that gave her the Spren to begin with, and all of those questions. I'm pretty sure that was actually part of Cavalar's people, now that I think about it. Anyway, gosh, it was very interesting to follow her backstory and also to see her develop with Timber, I think it was, that's actually like there encouraging her to be a better person and to grow, and that it's okay to be a coward at times, but there are times where you need to push past that. And so, yeah, I'm not gonna talk forever about that. I love seeing her, I almost like come out to Leshui because that's really what it felt like. She's like, I'm coming out as a radiant mom. Um, but telling her that she has become a radiant was absolutely amazing to see that Leshui like so quickly was overjoyed. And I really hope to see more of Leshui in the following book. Gosh, I can't believe it's so far away now. Um, but yeah, this was just amazing. I loved seeing Rolaine finally bond as Bren. Okay, this video is such a mess, but my battery just ran out on my camera, so I am back to my phone because I found out how to clean out the storage on it. So we should all be good now. Again, sorry for the angle change and whatever else. I'm honestly just trying to get through this video because who knows how long and choppy it is at this point. If you've stuck around this long, thank you so much. So, yeah, we were busy talking about Rolaine and him finally bonding as Bren. Gosh, the beginning, like, Kaladin is always putting his foot in it, and he's always doing the wrong thing for the right reasons, especially whenever it comes to Rolaine. And I know there are probably so many parallels between white people trying to connect with people of color and then just utterly failing. I'm sure there is some connection there. I just haven't personally experienced it. So yeah, it was definitely interesting. But his whole thing where he was like trying to force a Spren to bond with Rolaine was like, as soon as he said that, I'm like, oh no, dude, do not do this. And then with Rolaine's whole thing, like, I completely understand where he was coming from, and he was so in the right. And Kaladin is always trying to be like, well, I'm just trying to help you. And I'm like, dude, just listen. Just listen to him. He will tell you what he needs. You do not need to go out and try and do stuff for him. But yeah. So I think it was lovely. I hope that they tell Rolaine that the tower really wanted to bond him. Or the sibling, not the tower, the sibling. Because whenever he said that, like, oh, I have the perfect person for you, it's Rolaine, and I'm like, oh, yes! And I was so excited to see Rolaine bond with the sibling, but we still have Radiant Rolaine, and that's lovely. Yes, gosh, there's so much to cover here, and I know I'm, like, going over everything very quickly. But I still don't know how to feel about Raboniel. Yeah, that, she's a lot, and yeah, she's such a complex and interesting character that I feel like I'm gonna need so much more time to sit with just her story and to try and learn more about her, because I feel like I've missed so much. So yeah, I really want to do a reread sometime, but I have so many books to read before I do that. But yeah, Raboniel, I think I covered Leshui very quickly. Can't wait to see more of Leshui. I am so happy. I always thought that the listeners escaped. Like, I was so surprised to hear that they had drowned. So, like, the fact that they actually escaped and apparently are, like, friends with the Chasm Fiends now is so interesting. But yeah, I'm here for that. I'm so excited to see where that goes. Honestly, oh my gosh, how did I forget about this? Taravangian becoming Odium. Like, what the heck? What was that? Like, someone explain to me what happened there. Because, what? Like, I'm still in shock from reading that. I'm so scared now. Because, I don't know, I was talking to Mason about this, which I'm gonna have to have Mason on the channel. Like, he's refusing to, but he has opinions on things. Um, but yeah, he thinks that Taravangian will be able to, like, be a good odium and, like, I don't know what I'm doing here, like, pull back, withstand. He'll be able to handle odium's power, and I don't think he will. Oh, resist. That's where he thinks that he'll be able to resist the temptation, but I don't think he will. Because we still have Taravangian that has like the good days and the bad days. So now we have Odium that has like the good days and the bad days. And when Taravangian was like an 80-year-old man, he couldn't actually kill the kids singing outside his window. But now as Odium, he can just like kill everyone if they're annoying or if he thinks it's necessary. And he probably will think it's necessary at some point, and that's terrifying. Oh my gosh, I'm so scared. Um, yeah, Mason has this theory that, which is probably a pretty good theory to be honest, that cultivation picked 3 people to like take over as the next gods. So he thinks that Dalinar is going to become honor, and I guess that Lift is going to become cultivation, and that Taravangian has become odium, and so he thinks that that was like the end plan with cultivation. I don't know. I'm excited to see how it turns out. Gonna have to wait like 2 to 4 years. But yeah, gosh, honestly, I've talked for so long. I don't remember what I have and haven't said. But yeah, not Words of Radiance, Rhythm of War was so good, and I think it's probably my second favorite. Oathbringer, which is behind it at the moment, is still my first, and then Rhythm of War, and then I guess Way of Kings. I don't know, Way of Kings feels like it's from a completely different series because it really is just set up for Words of Radiance. And I know I might get some hate in the comments for that because I know that Way of Kings is a lot of people's favorites, but I honestly don't think much happened there. It was a very slow book for most of Way of Kings. And even Words of Radiance was more set up. And so I feel like we're actually finally getting into the action now. So yeah, I do have to admit that Rhythm of War, not too much happened because a lot of it was just the occupation of Urithiru. Oh, and if you've made it this far, you get a bonus Lyran rant. I hate Lyran so much, and I'm not actually going to clap because my dad's on a conference call. But like I hate this man so much. Like his philosophy drives me crazy. I hate the radical pacifist philosophy that he's using because he's such a hypocrite. Like, even his wife, Hasina, calls him out on this, and she's like, oh yeah, you fixed up warriors before, and now you're gonna, like, turn your son in. And I know Mason's gonna say that, like, he wasn't ever actually going to turn his son in, but guess what, Mason? This is my YouTube video, and I get to say whatever I want, and you can't actually respond to me or interrupt me. So, yeah. I am so mad at Lyran. Like, Lyran has hurt Kaladin so badly. And he's not willing to listen. Okay, I get, in like the last few chapters, he painted the glyph on his forehead. I know. I get it. But like, that doesn't make up for all of the emotional, like, trauma that he has put Kaladin through in the last few months. And like, that man disowned his son for trying to protect his friends. And like, there's so much that I dislike about Lyran. I love Hasina. Love Hasina. She's amazing. But like, I have no issue. I want to clarify this. I have no issue with people working within the system to destroy it from inside. Like the Potter that we saw, that like pretended to be all reverent to the fused, but was actually like working against them.
that's great. But the fact that Liren isn't trying to destroy the system, he's just working within the system. He has just become a part of it, and he doesn't see an issue with that. And it's so frustrating because he was like, "Oh well, like if we turn them in, then maybe we'll get like some extra favor." And I'm like, "Dude, you can't just rely on like the oppressors that have moved in. I completely understand that sometimes you need to pretend to like follow what they're doing. I completely get that. And if you're privileged enough to be able to work from the inside, you should. But that's not what Liren's doing, and that makes me so mad. Like, that is what Hasina's doing. She's like, yeah, we'll pretend to be, like, all cool with the fuse moving in and the occupation, but in reality, we're, like, collecting these maps and, like, helping the Radiants. But instead, Liren's like, why don't we just give them the maps, huh? Why don't we just give them my son, huh? Like, it's... I hate this man so much. And I know, it's... People are going to disagree with me, and you're welcome to down in the comments. I'm curious, but yeah, this has been a very choppy and heated towards the end tea and chat. I'm sorry for all the camera angle switches and probably the quality switch, but I hope you enjoyed hanging out and talking about Rhythm of War. I'd love to hear what you guys think down in the comments. I have my social media and everything down below. Links to my Bookstagram, my book Twitter, my bookshop.org page, and the Black Lives Matter card, as always. You guys need to check out what's going on Twitter. There have been some amazing donations set up for the Philippines with Hurricane Ulysses and everything that's been going on there. Check out those donations. I'll put links to the creators that are doing them down below. And yeah, there's so much going on in the world right now that we just really need to support each other. So check those out. Donate if you can. If not, please share them or boost or whatever. Just, yeah, check them out. Bye.